Welcome to Girl Dad, the podcast, the essential podcast for fathers navigating the complex but rewarding journey of raising daughters. I'm your host, Madeline Anderson, and I'm thrilled to bring you honest conversations with dads and daughters, sharing heartfelt stories, actionable advice, and real daughter perspectives that will help you be the best girl dad you can be. All right, Brandy Romero, welcome to Girl Dad, the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you on, and I think the dads are going to learn a lot about a topic that is very important and something that I think will be really relevant for a lot of dads and daughters out there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's just something we don't really talk about enough. And I definitely don't think dads talk about it enough.
Absolutely. Well, with that, I would love to kick it off with you just introducing yourself to the audience, a little bit about what you do, where you're from, and your background.
So I'm Brandy, born and raised in Los Angeles. I come from a big Mexican family. They now all live all over the place, but I do have some people still here rooted in LA. I try to be super active. I love to read. I go to all kinds of live music. Yeah, just try to be really active in my community too. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and a licensed professional clinical counselor here in Redondo Beach, but licensed all of California. I own my own private practice that I actually just started this year named Honey Hive Therapy. And that's been really exciting to start after just moving from a group practice to a private practice and starting my own little thing.
I am so proud of you, Brandy, and I'm so excited to have you on. As I mentioned, I think this is so important. And a little bit of background for the audience. I actually met Brandy at Shellback. And for those of you who live in the Los Angeles or South Bay area, you know that's the cute little bar in Manhattan Beach. And it was a place that we met on a random night and just became instant friends. And so I've had the pleasure of getting to know Brandy these past few years and just seeing her absolutely transform her business as a therapist and, like she mentioned, start her own company. So proud of you. So excited for all that's to come. And she really is changing lives. And I'm really grateful to have her on today. So, um, as far as the therapy background and kind of your specialty, can you touch on who you tend to primarily work with and maybe your favorite part about what you do?
Yeah, I have a lot to say here. I think that's a big question in the therapy world. My favorite part, why I did this, why I started. But I primarily work with teenagers struggling with body image, eating disorders, self-esteem, really just the growing pains that come with becoming a mini human. I also do work with high conflict divorces, helping teens navigate advocacy with their parents, especially when they feel caught in the middle. But overall, I work with all ages, as young as 4 years old to 70 years old, on all different types of mental health concerns. I started working with adolescents during grad school, specifically kids with blindness, which is such a small and random niche, but I ended up really loving it. From there, I ended up working in a residential treatment center for eating recovery. It was definitely the hardest thing I've ever done professionally. And after that, I was done. I moved into group practice. Now I'm in private practice. And again, working in the treatment center was the hardest job I've ever had. And so initially, I didn't think I wanted to work with eating recovery. But then once in private practice, I started working with teens. I saw how prevalent body image concerns, eating disorders, self-esteem issues are during teenagehood. And I realized how passionate I was about changing that narrative. These teens are just navigating so much already: friendships, family, social media, identity, and their body image and eating does not need to be another thing that they need to worry about. So now I have the privilege of developing these deep relationships with my clients, and I truly care about each of them in the same way I do my nieces, my nephews, and I love being able to help them find their voice, because I think that's when things start to change, when they realize they can advocate for themselves and be heard. So that's my favorite thing about being a therapist is just helping these teenagers, kids become better humans.
Amazing. For today's conversation, I think one theme that we really want to talk about is kind of that eating disorder conversation and how dads can support daughters who are going through body image issues or full on eating disorders, and really how they can prevent them in the first place. As you mentioned, this is not something that is talked about enough. It is kind of taboo and one of those things that I think a lot of people pretend aren't really happening, including the daughters who are maybe going through these kinds of struggles. And so this is a really open and honest conversation, and really just meant to help bring awareness to the subject and help dads with navigating these difficult situations. So, really excited to talk about this, even though it is not a very exciting subject per se. um, so why don't we start off by just talking about maybe some of the common eating disorders and signs of them, in case so dads know what to look out for and pick up on before the disorder potentially becomes worse. Our clients are so lucky to have you. You're a ray of sunshine, and I know that this is something that you have a strong specialty in, and I think that you've already changed so many lives, and hopefully today you can help fathers navigate how to help their daughters through these kinds of things. Because do you know the statistics on body image issues and how prevalent those are?
I don't know exact statistics, but I do just think it's more prevalent than you realize. Again, I started working with teenagers, and almost every teenager I work with has some sort of issue with an eating disorder or even just down to like disordered eating thoughts. And you realize that more people are struggling with it than you think.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what I was getting at. I think that, dads might think, oh, my daughter doesn't have an eating disorder, but it doesn't mean that she has a really 100% strong body image of herself. And there, I almost think it's on a spectrum, right? It's like you've got body image, negative thoughts on one end, and then you've got like full blown eating disorders on the other end, but there's everything in between as well. And so, being a father, there's certain things that you can do to help support your daughter with these inevitable questions she's going to ask herself, thoughts that she's going to have about herself. And you can really keep everything on one end of the spectrum through your support and your words. And we'll get into that today. And obviously, it's not 100% up to the father either. And so that's kind of where I want to go with this conversation too. It's like, okay, well, what happens if things progress and the daughter is struggling with something a little bit more serious, and how can dads support their daughters through that? And so, like we talked about earlier, I think this is a very important conversation. I think it's a little bit taboo because it's not something fun to talk about for anybody, for the daughter, for the dad, and it's hard. This is a very serious topic. With that, I think let's start on the body image side of the spectrum. How can dads support a daughter's healthy body image? What have you seen to be the best kind of practices in that manner?
I definitely think to your point too, ads can't prevent this. There's so many different factors that uh, cause an eating disorder. So just dads, like you can do your absolute best, but there's other factors that just might play a role in your daughter experiencing negative eating habits or disordered thoughts, negative body image that you unfortunately just don't have control over. But even with that being said, there's still some things that you can do that can help lower the risk. And that's really just creating a culture at home that supports body acceptance and emotional safety. What this looks like is really no food talk that labels things as good or bad. I think that ends up being a really big factor in, like, eating disorders of, "Okay, this food is good, this is bad, now I can't eat the bad food," and then they start focusing only on the good foods, and that is just an early sign as well of disordered thoughts. I think another thing is not tying value to weight or size, and that might even be yours or theirs. Trying not to talk about your body as fat or your weight as too big because that voice becomes their voice. So if you can just shy away from talking about body in that negative way at all. Um, Another thing I really notice with my clients is pushing sports or athletic performance. I think this can cause some resistance to movement. And I think that's movement is really important for mental health. So you don't want to create this negative mindset around movement by being too forceful about their athletic performance. Um, Another way to just create emotional safety is allowing your daughter to take up emotional space and not minimizing their feelings. And I think that will also just play a role in developing the relationship so they can talk to you about things like any emotions and any of these issues with body acceptance. So, all those little things.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think when you're speaking about the emotional safety and allowing daughters to take up space, I think this is a common theme for men and women in general because and how men can show up for women best. I think, we tend to be more of the feelers and we have a stronger emotional side. And I think a lot of times when we come to men, whether it's our husbands or our dads for support, sometimes their reaction naturally is to solve the problem. And that's okay because we acknowledge that that's kind of how they think. But if to really connect with a daughter and a wife and a woman on a deeper level, instead of jumping to a solution, like, for example, if a daughter is upset because she feels like she's gained weight or something, maybe she's going through puberty and it's her body is changing, instead of saying, okay, well, how about you run every day 3 miles and you track your calories and you work out more than you consume. Like that would be a dad solution. Like, here's how to lose weight to feel better.
Mhm.
Whereas the on the emotional side, I think what she really needs is that feeling of feeling worthy and feeling beautiful, which is really what she's struggling with at the moment. It's really not even so much about the weight gain as it is the implications of what that means. And she might be feeling less than, she might be feeling unworthy, she might be tying her worthiness to her weight and feeling like she's not meeting her expectations for herself. And so those are the kinds of emotional things that might be going on in her head. And as a father, what I'm hearing you say is that you can support her even in the like body image way just by being there for emotional safety and emotional support by letting her express her feelings and hugging her and telling her that she had, her feelings are valid and that you love her no matter what and she's beautiful, and just kind of diminishing her fears without telling her her fears are not valid, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my advice there too is just let them be emotional. Like, let your daughter be dramatic. Don't try to shrink her world down just because the high school drama she's going through won't matter later. I think just go through the emotions with them, like that boy who didn't text back, that's a huge heartbreak for a teen. Not getting invited to a sleepover, this is huge for social lives at this time. So just don't invalidate their feelings just because it seems so small, and sit with her in those emotions. Because yeah, I think that's where people mess up is going straight to the solutions and not realizing that sometimes girls just want to express their emotions and just be heard. So just sit with them in the emotions. Remind your daughter never to settle for that boy who's not texting her back, and uh, remind her that she can be emotional and still be loved, and that really just creates emotional safety.
That's so true. And I think another point on that is when it comes to validating the feelings, naturally, men and sometimes women too, when there's somebody being emotional, it's natural to want to help them by stopping that kind of emotion. And so, let's say for the example of the friend not getting invited to the sleepover, as you mentioned, a dad might say, it doesn't matter. Like, don't worry about it. And like, none of this matters right now or in
Mhm.
the future or whatever. And so that might have 100% intention from him to help his daughter and make her feel better. But what that tells her is that she's not supposed to feel that way. It doesn't matter. So her feelings are now invalid. Right. And really, what she wants to hear is, honey, I know that might hurt. Like, tell me more. What are you feeling right now? Right. Like, kind of letting her feel her feelings and then being there as her support system without shutting it down and telling her that she's not supposed to feel this way or that way. And again, I know it's like, it's so hard because that's a male brain's like natural reaction and he might want to help and he's really trying to do the right thing. But I think dads just need to understand that the female brain is wired differently. And so what you say and what we hear are often two different things. And so if you can take this conversation into practice, and allow your daughter to have those emotions and feel the emotional security, then it'll just be better for her in the long run.
Yeah. And again, I just think being able to create this emotionally safe space for your daughter is going to help her come to you in even more serious issues like eating disorders, where they may not want to talk about those more serious things. But if you can create the small spaces for them to experience their emotions with you, they'll be able to open up about the bigger things as well.
So true. Okay, so you just mentioned eating disorders. I would love to hear from you about any sort of common causes for eating disorders and if you tend to see common patterns when you're working with the teens who are struggling with eating disorders.
Yeah. So eating disorders are biopsychosocial, which means they come from a mix of biological, psychological, and social factors. So it really can just be a combination of so many things that are causing the eating disorder. Some common patterns I see are pressure to perform in sports, constant comments from family about weight or appearance, even just society in general. Feeling invisible or out of control, social media comparisons, sadly, and even getting praised for losing weight, even if it's unhealthy, tends to be a pattern and then also a trigger to continue that eating disorder. Um, and it's tough because once an eating disorder starts, it really takes hold and it just grows and grows and it seeps into their brain and it's just hard to stop, and it ends up becoming a way of coping with deeper pain. So, at the core of eating disorders, it's often a response to something much deeper: pain, trauma, a need to be seen, a need to feel in control. So, there are a lot of things that can contribute to it, and sometimes it's just finding the root of what that is, and how do you work on the root of that?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And can you talk more about that connection between control, trauma, and eating disorders?
Yeah, so since eating disorders are often about control, especially like I said previously, like teens feel so out of control in all these different areas of their life. They're managing trauma, family conflict, identity struggles. These can all fuel that need for control when everything else is overwhelming. The eating disorder ends up becoming a coping mechanism around how do I control this really overwhelming part of my life. I can't, okay, an eating disorder can be the one place in my life that I can have control over. So I'm going to use that to feel more in control of my life. So it's never just about the food. It really is a way to cope, to feel something, or maybe to feel nothing at all. So again, there's just usually deeper roots to where this eating disorder began to take hold.
And do you find that that's the case across the board for all different eating disorders, whether it's anorexia or bulimia? Like it's kind of that similar control story, or does it tend to only be for one type of disorder versus another?
Yeah, it usually is pretty much that across the board, but it doesn't just have to be control. Just think that's very common. Um, Sometimes it ends up just being more like trauma that started this. I also think it's a can be a learned behavior from hearing parents talk about themselves or their eating and their disordered thoughts kind of just sink into a kid's brain. Um, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, if that's what they're experiencing on a daily basis and they're hearing their mom talk about the way she looks and constantly making comments about her food, it'll definitely have an influence. I always say kids are sponges and they really pick up on way more than you could have ever even imagined, even subconsciously. Like the kid might not know that they're picking up on it, but they are. So that's a really important point, and I think it goes for both dads and moms, and just really being conscious of how you talk about yourself in front of your children and how you talk about food. And like you
Mhm.
mentioned, maybe shying away from labeling food as healthy or unhealthy. And that's
Mhm.
something that I honestly wouldn't have thought of. And I probably would have been doing my future children a disservice because I would think it'd be really good to advocate for healthy food. Like I am really interested in clean eating and in non-toxic living. And so
Mhm.
I can actually now see that if I was really forcing all of these kinds of practices that I believe in on my children, it could have a really negative effect. So based on your advice, I'm now going to try to be really careful about how I'm labeling things. And I will definitely be providing really healthy food to my children, but I don't need to force that narrative down, their heads because I want them to come to the conclusion that they like that food because it makes them feel good, not because it's labeled one way or the other.
And absolutely, like you should be able to teach your kids about a healthy lifestyle around food, but it has to be about balance and not that foods are bad or good, but exactly what you said, like these foods make you feel better. And, we need protein because this is what it does for our bodies. And that, we still need carbs because this is what it does for our bodies. And just remembering that, like, every food group is important and allowing them to have that balance. And also allowing them to have that super sugary processed food because their friends are having it and they want to have it in that day. Um, I think a big part of our society, yeah, starts to tell us, look at the labels and hyper focus on them. And that's fine. And we can learn that as adults, but as kids, they do not need to be reading labels and looking at how much added sugar is in this or what seed oils are in that food because there's just too much that they're navigating at a young age to then start also looking at labels and focusing on that.
Yeah, that's a great point, and definitely something that I'm going to implement moving forward when that day comes because I think, you can have really good intentions, and I'm sure that that's where a lot of these kind of things start. It's not obviously no parent wants their children to have body image issues or eating disorders, but I think it's a mixture of what they learn at home and then what they see on social media. And then, like you said, some of the control factors and all these different elements that kind of can all combine. And so, what you can do as a parent is focus on what you can control, which is setting the narrative and then supporting your daughter's self image in general, I can imagine, right? Because it's not just about food and weight, but their understanding of themselves and how confident they are in who they are as a person. Um, because when they have a strong sense of self and they love that they're smart and fun and a good person and nice, then I think that it creates a little bit of a force field so that these other kinds of things that they witness on social media or with their friends don't affect them as much.
Yeah, and I think to bring up social media, love social media. It's a great connector. There's so many good things I learned from social media, but there is a lot of negative content out there, even around eating disorders specifically, and this desire to be skinny. And there's a lot of very triggering content for people struggling through an eating disorder. So I think as a dad, just being aware of the media your daughter is consuming and just having safe, curious conversations about it. So if she is seeing anything that is promoting an eating disorder, which is sadly some content out there, then you can have this conversation with her about how obviously it's not good to have an eating disorder and it's so, so dangerous. So just being curious about the media because there is some very toxic content out there.
Yeah. And there's toxic users out there. I mean, I think about one of our really good friends who is a fitness influencer. She does amazing things. She's always promoting healthy body image, healthy eating, and she's really worked on her body to make it strong and amazing. And she gets comments all the time and people in her direct messages that are just awful, like so rude, just actual internet bullies. And she showed me these, and it's just shocking. These people exist out there who are so mean. And honestly, even on my YouTube, as I'm growing Girl Dad, I've gotten some mean things said to me, and I'm just like, who are these people? And why are you being so mean? But like, it really is, it's a reality out there. And so if your child has social media, there is a chance that there are people outside of your control, outside of her control, that are saying things that will affect her sense of self. And so, like you said, being aware of that is key. And then also just going back to that emotional security and openness conversation we had earlier, the more that you create a safe space for your child to open up to you and have conversations and feel like she can be emotional with you, the more you're going to be aware of these kinds of things because she will more likely come to you if there is a situation rather than try to deal with it on her own internally, which I think is sometimes what kind of snowballs into these kinds of things.
Mhm. Yeah, and yeah, people just are really okay with hiding behind their screen and being a bully. So, just something to look out for, sadly. Social media can be so great, but there are some negative sides to that.
Definitely. Okay, so I feel like we've talked a lot about kind of eating disorders stem from, maybe how we can prevent eating disorders in the first place as parents or as a father. But would love to talk about worst case scenarios where if a daughter is experiencing an eating disorder, is going through it, are there ways that dads can help? And if so, how can they help?
Yeah, I think hopefully your daughter is willing to talk about it. Again, emotional safety, they feel safe with you, and then they are willing to talk about it. And if they aren't willing to, I think you don't need to force her to talk about these things. Just point out these changes you've maybe seen, not directly to her body, but just notice like changes even to down to mood, or if you notice any like eating disorder rituals that are coming up, and just open up the space for her to talk, and then really just showing up for her and showing up without judgment. You can also always involve a doctor or a therapist just because kids are more likely to open up to a professional first. I think that it takes a little bit to build that relationship, but it's easier to talk about all that shame with a professional who isn't going to judge you. And I think that's okay that they're not talking to you as long as they can get some support, because there's just so much shame wrapped up in our thoughts sometimes that talking to a professional is going to be really positive there, and your daughter's going to get support either way.
100% agree that if a daughter is not willing to talk about it, she should seek help. I think people like you, and specifically you, are doing amazing things and you're helping people every day because it really is something that can be awkward for a child. It's really hard to bring these kinds of things up. I mean, maybe even if the dad could or parents could offer therapy as a solution without even acknowledging that maybe the eating disorder is a problem. Like maybe it's just like, oh, hey, you can go talk to this person. And I'm sure that will naturally kind of progress. And you tell me if there's something wrong with that and maybe they should be more direct about it. I'm just trying to think of like easy ways to help open the door for your daughter without making it worse. So first that, but then also if your daughter is willing to talk about it and you don't have to go that route, I would love for you to touch more on how, like, what you should say to them, how you can support them in these conversations, and how you can help your daughter move from an eating disorder to back to normal eating habits and healthy eating habits.
Mhm. I do think, sometimes working with a professional takes that stress away from you and it avoids the rupture in the relationship that can come. Sometimes if you're really forcing these conversations, your daughter might end up being angry with you and you just don't want these body image concerns and these disordered eating thoughts to get in the way of the relationship you have with your daughter because it really has nothing to do with the relationship that you can have with them. Um, and I think it just feels amazing for a daughter to have a connection with their dad outside of what they look like. So sometimes it's just helping distract them from all of these very negative thoughts that start coming into their mind. And I think it's helping redirect their conversations. If you hear them saying, "Hey, I'm fat," or "Oh, I can't eat that. That's bad for me," or anything where it sounds like an eating disorder, I think it's redirecting that, helping them speak more kindly to themselves and even speak better about their body, help them like see that their body is great and help them see that they're amazing outside of what they look like.
On that note, are there any like affirmations or specific things that dads can say that do kind of counteract those negative notes that the daughter might be saying?
This is kind of a hard one because I think a lot of people kind of go the route of don't comment on your daughter's body and just, only comment on how intelligent they are and how kind they are. And I think that is important uh, to help them understand that they are not just what they look like. But once they get deep into an eating disorder, they might start thinking like, well, my dad never comments on my body. And I think there's so many ways that an eating disorder brain becomes like twisted in comments. Um, but I think it's helping them give themselves affirmations. And I constantly recommend affirmations and body affirmations and just saying to yourself, like, I love my legs and I love my arms, and really focusing on different, very specific body parts and just saying how much they love them. So helping do that with them, even. So they're using their voice to say it.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important. And it reminds me of how a lot of parents tell their children how proud they are of them, which is so important. And I think that should absolutely continue. But I think a lot of parents forget about the you should be so proud of yourself kind of narrative and helping the child really truly feel pride in themselves. And what that does is it helps prevent that kind of need for external validation. And
Mm,
so, like what you're saying, instead of just telling your daughter that she's beautiful or she's has a great body or like her weight is very healthy or whatever these kinds of narratives are that might counteract what she is saying out loud, rather than you doing that, helping her change her own narrative is so key because until her thoughts change, her feelings won't change. And if she's trapped in this kind of disordered eating, thinking pattern, then she's going to stay there until she learns to change those thoughts herself because your thoughts create your reality. I mean, it's like all the Joe Dispenza, right? But it's so true, and it's I think with eating disordered teenagers specifically, it's so important that their narrative shifts, and you can help her shift by helping promote the affirmations and guiding her thoughts. But at the end of the day, you can't change her eating disorder. You have to help her change her thoughts. Is that
mhm.
accurate?
Yeah, absolutely accurate. I think it, and again, it's so hard. I think most dietitians or therapists who work with eating disorders end up separating the like healthy brain or healthy self with the eating disorder brain or eating disorder self. And it really becomes a second voice inside their head. And an eating disorder brain, or like a lot of people end up just saying like Ed, like, really takes control of the thoughts, and it really becomes hard to differentiate between what are my healthy and logical thoughts versus what is the eating disorder telling me I need to do. And so it's also just helping find that logic of the healthy self and what we should be saying to our bodies rather than allowing this eating disorder to tell us these fake truths.
I really like that, Brandy, because I think that when young girls are struggling with an eating disorder or honestly any sort of wrong thoughts, they think that they're the problem. And when you label someone as, oh, they have an eating disorder or they are anorexic or they have this, it makes them feel like they're the issue and they have a problem or a disease of some sorts, right? But when you create this thing called ED, obviously standing for eating disorder, that's kind of like in the head, that's trying, it's almost like the angel and the devil on the shoulders, right? And the devil is Ed, but he's like, hey, you can't eat that, that has too many calories or whatever. But you can, you know, that on the other shoulder, like you are the true self, you're the angel, and you can make decisions accordingly based on how you want to feel and not let it be this all-consuming thing. And yeah, I've never heard that before, and I think that that's a really smart way to go about it, because again, it pulls this negative thing away from your daughter and makes it this external thing that's trying to weave its way in. And the daughter can say, nope, like I'm not listening to that voice. Or it can say like, thanks so much for that suggestion or those thoughts, but I will not be entertaining that idea, and just kind of start to have power over those negative thoughts, because that's what they are at the end of the day. Their thoughts, they're not true to herself, but I think for a lot of young women, especially who are still just figuring out themselves and their thoughts and all of it, it can feel very overwhelming and feel like they are one with the eating disorder.
Yeah, I always tell, and this actually goes for other mental health disorders as well, this externalization of the problem. I always tell people to talk back to the voice. Like, yes, Ed is saying there's too many calories in this, can't eat it. And it's like, shut up, Ed. I'm not going to listen to you today because I actually really want to eat those Oreos. And I don't care that there's those calories because I deserve this. And just talking back to that voice and making the healthy voice grow stronger. So dads can help in that area too. And this is where their logic can really help their daughters and reminding them that even if you eat X amount of calories over what you should be eating in a day, you're not going to gain 5 pounds.
Right. Like you said, it can translate to other areas of life. And even just with anxious thoughts, a lot of girls struggle with anxiety and worrying about things and kind of ruminating. And I know anxiety is definitely something that I've been working on and have worked on. And you're so right. I've gone to Max, my husband, for things, and his logic actually really helps with my emotions, because it's like, oh, yeah, that's right. That's actually not gonna happen. Or if we're on a plane and it's shaking, he's like, it's turbulence. This is totally normal. He's like just talking through, but the feelings that I'm experiencing are like, oh my gosh, the plane is going down, and just really scary thoughts. And then, but I can also use this example, and it's like, thanks for that thought. I'm not going to entertain that because I know I'm perfectly safe. So yeah, that's a really good point. And I think something that dads can keep in mind, because I'm sure that's not really common knowledge. That's a
Hmm.
therapist thing to have in your back pocket, but people don't really know how to control their thoughts and emotions the same way that they do if they go see a therapist, or if they are one like you. So we've talked a lot about these eating disorders, but let's talk a little bit more about what they are, because I don't think that it is common knowledge about what each one is, what the signs are, that kind of thing, just so that dads can be aware. And I know this is kind of a scary topic for a lot of dads, and obviously they don't want this to happen, but I think it is important just to be aware of what's out there, just so that they can keep their eyes open for the signs and hopefully help support them in the ways that we've discussed before it snowballs into something worse.
Yeah, there are like four main types of eating disorders. And one is, I think, probably the most like well-known one is going to be anorexia nervosa. And this is extreme restriction of food, fear of gaining weight, overall just body image distortion. Then we have bulimia nervosa, and this will be binge eating. So eating increased amounts of food at a time. And then it's followed by purging, and purging can mean vomiting, but it could also mean laxative use. It could mean over exercising. And then we have binge eating disorder. And binge eating disorder is episodes of eating very large quantities of food without purging in any way. There's usually a lot of shame attached here, and it's usually done in secret. So there's a lot of hiding food involved in binge eating disorder. And I think probably the least well known eating disorder is ARFID, and it's avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. It's common in younger kids. That doesn't mean it's not prevalent in other ages. And it's not about body image at all, actually. And it's just about food aversions and extreme pickiness that ends up leading to nutritional problems. So those, and then there's different types within those. And again, there's like a spectrum, but everything is like diagnosed very specifically. So you could have different parts of like each of these, but diagnosing is very specific within the whole like medical system. But signs to watch for that could maybe show these if you're not seeing directly vomiting or laxative use or overexercising or restriction of food. Some other rituals that I have noticed or I've seen in working in a treatment center is cutting food into really small bites and taking very small bites of food, overloading on water, or even overloading just on vegetables to feel full. Um, Label reading, like we've kind of talked about too, is a common sign. Skipping meals overall, avoiding eating around others, and um, other little aversions to food touching can be a sign, and doesn't mean you need all or any of these, but those are some little signs that you can see. And drastic weight change, up or down, and even like mood changes, irritability, social withdrawal can also be signs. Again, all of them can be, don't have to be signs.
Super helpful. And I think for dads out there, and again, not to scare any dads, but I think what Brandy is saying is really important to be aware of, because a lot of girls who have eating disorders are really good at hiding them. From what I've seen and experienced, I feel like everyone knows a handful of young women who have had eating disorders, and it's extremely common, first of all. So I would say, first off, if your daughter has one or if she develops one in the future, this is not your fault, as we discussed, but it's also extremely common, and women are just really good at hiding it too. So these signs might be really hard to see if she, like you said, one of the signs is not eating in front of other people. So maybe she's constantly busy. Oh, I'm gonna eat dinner in my room or whatever that might be. She could be trying to hide something from you. And so I always love the idea of families eating together at the table. I think it's a really important bonding time, but I think it's also a great way to, understand how her eating behaviors are and if there is a change. And you don't need to say something right away, but maybe just pay attention and see if you're noticing patterns, because that's really when things can go south. And again, women can hide it and it's hard to look out for. So just being aware of these signs is, I think, really important.
I love the suggestion too of eating a family dinner. I think that's so important, and it normalizes eating and it normalizes food. And also, it's just a time to connect too and check in on their day. I think family dinners is so important. And I don't think people talk about how important they are enough.
So true. And I think it's another time to put the phones away. And we talked a little bit about social media and the dangers of social media. And one of the ways to create that force field that we talked about is to have a life outside of social media. You know, like if your kids see the parents always on their phones and posting on social media, and then they're also on their phones and they're interested in what other people are doing and they don't realize that they have this beautiful life in front of them, then it's a lot easier for them to be a little bit more vulnerable to these other people's lives and what they're doing or how they're eating or how they're being told they should eat. And so being able to just sit down with the family, put any distractions away, have some real quality time is so important for all the different reasons. So cannot stress that enough.
I have so many teenagers who actually like specifically teenagers really want this and then they don't because I get it, life's busy and parents can't, but again, a lot of teenagers say they'd love to do that, but no one does it and everyone kind of just takes the meals to their room. And for everyone who thinks that teenagers are closed off and don't want to talk, I think they truly are looking for connection. And sometimes you have to just give them the opportunities to connect.
Absolutely. I just had a conversation with Larry Hagner of the Dad Edge, and he has an amazing mastermind with a lot of different dads that he helps. And we were talking about teenagers, and he was saying the same thing. He said, teenagers aren't this like negative time period and they're all the same and like you can't connect with them. It's impossible. It's not. It is very possible to have a great relationship with your teenage daughter or child, and a lot of it really comes with opening that door and allowing them to be included in your space and to also want to be part of their world and really find interest in what they're doing, and just making sure that openness in the relationship stays very apparent so that the child knows that they're welcome. And there's, going back to the emotional openness and security, it's all these kinds of common themes that we keep bringing up. It's just making sure that they know that you're there for them no matter what. And I think, like you said, I mean, they want that relationship, and
Mhm.
sitting down at the dinner table is a great way to do so. And there's lots of other things that you can do as a father to be close with your daughter or child. But I think those are some really good tips. So thank you.
Yeah, to that too, just yes, teenagers are not that bad. They're not these scary monsters. They just don't know how to advocate for themselves yet. And again, I love, love, love helping kids create better relationships with their parents because it's so important. And I think that I think that dads, and I know you've talked to this point so many times, Maddie, about dads just like bringing their daughters into their world and showing them what they like and being interested in what their daughters like. And I have this really amazing, like, I don't know, I think it's really amazing. I just think it's so cute. But I have this story of this client that I worked with. Their dad would constantly read. Well, the client was like a very, very big avid reader, and the dad decided he would start just reading all of the fantasy books, even the ones with smut in it that his daughter reading, just to connect with her. And he wanted to see the world through her eyes, wanted to see what she was loving about these books, and then they would talk about it. And I just think it's amazing that this dad was reading the ACOTAR series just because his daughter loved this series, or really anything. He would read tons of fantasy books, and sometimes it's just about showing up to see where your daughter is and what her interests are.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think it goes both ways. I mean, when you show interest in her world and want to be a part of it, that's when she tends to show interest in your world. And a relationship takes two people. So I think keeping that in mind is so important. Um, one quick question just for any dad out there who might have said something harmful in the past to their daughter, maybe related to body image or otherwise. From a therapist point of view, do you have any tips on maybe how he can repair the relationship or maybe take back something that he has said previously? I think this is especially relevant in this conversation and just making sure that negative words don't hang there and create an effect or longer effect than they need to.
Yeah, that is such an important question, and I think that again, like that could create a rupture in the relationship, and you do not want this rupture around especially like anything body image related to be the fact like the reason you and your daughter have a bad relationship. And I think especially for men who have more of a struggle with showing vulnerability, I think this is showing vulnerability by just owning it and saying, I realized I've said things about this in the past. They may have hurt you. I'm learning. I'm sorry. I care about you. I want to do better. And actually making those changes. But the vulnerability that comes with just owning it and saying, I was wrong, I think that just tells your daughter, I messed up and I'm going to try again. And really, that's what it comes down to, just saying, I messed up. And I think that vulnerability will speak more than you know.
I could not agree more. Those words, they clear the air.
Mhm.
Like you can start fresh even if you've messed up, if you apologize the right way and you really do show that you care and you put the intention to be better. And if you say you're going to do something, if you do it, those are all really great things that you can do to create confidence in your daughter about her relationship with you and about the way that you look at her. I think that's really important because, yeah, I mean, sometimes people mess up, right? People say the wrong things, they don't mean it. I think, especially when it comes to body image, it's such a tricky subject. And, I know a dad who made his daughter run laps before she hung out with her friends, and this was his way of helping her get to a healthy weight or an ideal body in his mind. And I really don't think he had bad intentions, but I know
Mhm.
that that was really detrimental to her. And I think if he, had known about the impact that he had, and maybe that's I don't know, extreme example, but like either way, I think apologizing does wonders. And I think just knowing that you can go back on these kinds of things and you can be better is a good way to shed some positive light on this conversation that tends to be a little bit heavier, a little bit darker.
Yeah, absolutely. And dads are humans too. And daughters will learn that and understand that, dads can make mistakes. So just own them and then tell them I made a mistake. And then it helps them learn that they can make mistakes as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, Brandy. This has been an incredible conversation. I have learned so much, and I'm sure any dad listening also has so many takeaways. And this is just such an important conversation. I cannot express it enough. So, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Thank you for being here today. And I look forward to getting all the feedback from dads about how important this was for them.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I truly love talking about this stuff because I've become so passionate and about anything therapy related. But anytime I get to help out anyone and hopefully just be a little bit of positive change in this world, like one person at a time, I think it's important and it's obviously what I care about doing and hope to do in this world.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And for all the dads out there who have a daughter that maybe needs somebody to work with, please reach out to Brandy or reach out to me and I'll connect you with Brandy. She's amazing and I'm just so grateful to know her.
Yes, thanks so much.
Thank you for tuning into Girl Dad the podcast. If you found today's conversation helpful, please subscribe, leave a review and share it with a fellow girl dad. I read every review and truly take your words to heart. To close out, remember, your intentional moments make lasting legacies. See you next week.